we don't define the word normal like other people do.
You know, where do you draw lines?
It's like, he's not gonna live to be one.
Because that's my job.
In my eyes, they're superheroes.
You can't go out and accomplish anything when you're living in fear of tomorrow. You know, as you look back at it, I think you just kind of realize how life and stuff, the path is not always what you think it's going to be. It's not always the way you think it's going to be.
Growing up with my dad being a baseball coach and all, I've been used to moving, but I never pictured us actually moving back to Stephenville, Texas, where I was born. But I thought it was cool that if my little brother was going to be born, to be in the same town as my sister and I.
When the job came open, you know, it was something that we had interest in, and the initial interest, honestly, was just the ability to possibly get the kids back around family.
I didn't really realize I was going to be missing all my friends that I made in Utah, but when I moved to Texas, I made instant friends here, and it was really fun.
Honestly, and I've said this 100 times when people have asked, it's the only non-Division I job I would have left for. We loved Salt Lake. We loved our life there.
Strange story. I had a reoccurring dream before I became pregnant with Jacoby. And it was always this blonde-haired, curly-haired boy running around and always had a pacifier in his mouth. And I thought, this is just the strangest thing ever to have this dream that kept on reoccurring. And anyway, a few months later, we found out we were pregnant with Jacoby. So
we were on the road for my baseball tournament, and I remember one night we had the late game, and then we came back to the hotel, and mom, dad, and sister were in bed. I just got out of the shower, getting ready for bed, and then next thing I know, mom and dad call us over, and they say we're gonna have a little brother.
Definitely wasn't expecting Christmas baby.
I think Dad ran into my sister and I's room around 5:15 in the morning. At first, I thought he was just really excited for Christmas.
Tradition is cinnamon rolls. Had got all of that prepped and ready to go for the next morning to get up and have Christmas with Maddox and Kaylee.
We get back to the house and we smell something burnt, and it was the cinnamon rolls.
Kids just got up and ran right past the Christmas tree and jumped in the car. It was not what I expected out of them, but they were like, okay, let's go.
You know, but that's life. When opportunities come, you're usually not planning for them. The best opportunities, you're usually not planning for them. You've planned for them, but the opportunity doesn't come when you necessarily plan for it. It comes as maybe you're focused on something else, and boom, what you have prepared for actually does present itself. And I think it hit us all within a couple of weeks, and then it was pretty fast-paced, but a lot of fun.
We did not know that there was something wrong before birth, after birth. 5 days later, he had a little bit of jaundice and dehydration. We were having some feeding difficulties with him a little bit. Typical newborn thing that would happen afterwards.
I didn't really understand why he wasn't gaining weight, why he wasn't sleeping. I guess I just thought newborns weren't going to sleep, and everyone goes through times where they don't gain weight, so I didn't really understand.
The first 3 months of his life, was labeled as failure to thrive. With that, we tried every baby bottle, every baby nipple that there was out there, trying to get him to latch on to something. He would have milk just pouring down his face, and we didn't understand why. They sent us to several specialists. Swallow studies were done to try to see why he wasn't able to get formula into his stomach.
After it didn't go away and they got worse, and we went, I think it really hit me when, like, the doctor said, you're going to pack your bags and we're sending you to Cook's, and you're going to be up there a little bit. And I think at that point, as a parent and as a father, you kind of go, okay, we're getting ready to deal with some things that we haven't dealt with before.
I want to say around 5 or 6 months, I heard my parents talking about how something isn't right.
At first, we thought he was just like, burping and passing gas, and he was just like really trying hard. And we didn't realize that he was actually like starting to have seizures and that he was going to be different.
I think it was after that 6-month period where I started to realize that Jacoby wasn't going to be the same as Kaylee.
First diagnosis came out when he was about right around the 6-7 month range. He had started having seizures. They're described as jackknife seizures, but the seizure itself has been labeled infantile spasms or West syndrome, and it's a pretty intense little seizures that you have. You have about a cluster of 25 of them, and they last about a minute, and they're just constant over and over. And he built up to about 25 of those seizures a day. One of the side effects of the shots is no immunity in the system. So how, with the kids going back to school, how with Maddox starting junior high football, how with coach going back to his classes, you're constantly exposed to germs all the time. How do you even go to the grocery store without being exposed to germs? It just ended up being, okay, I'm going to the grocery store. Who's watching him? Go to the grocery store, unload everything, go take a shower. Now you can touch Jacoby.
When I would come home from school, immediately I have to get into the shower and clean off so that Jacoby wouldn't catch anything that I could have carried home from school or from a friend's house. And for years I wasn't allowed to have friends over just because we couldn't risk Jacoby getting any more sick.
The newborn stage should be gone now, and he should start to sleep, and he wasn't ever sleeping. There's times where it was difficult on Kaylee and I, but I wouldn't say it was all that bad from our perspective because Mom and Dad didn't show it. They didn't complain. They didn't ever take a day off. I mean, you can as a parent. You can't take a day off. There's no days off.
I mean this in the nicest way possible, but they aged 5 years in 6 months. They didn't sleep but 2 hours a night.
It was difficult on my parents. Even though they didn't show it, you can just imagine how difficult it was going a full year without hardly any sleep. Maximum, first year I think maximum was 2 hours a night for Jacoby. I don't know anyone that could do that. I don't know anyone that could go on maximum 2 hours of sleep on any night and be fine the next day, much less do it for a full year. My parents, they're special.
When you have a child that's legally blind, when you have a child that has the sensory disorders, if that's what you want to call them, that Jacoby has, the things that he deals with that, none of us here understand. We live with him every day, and we don't understand everything he deals with. But, something as simple as going out to eat was overstimulating. The sounds, you don't stop to think about it. You don't stop to think that, okay, this child doesn't see, but we're still going to live a normal life. So you go out to eat, and there's so much hustle and commotion at a restaurant, and it's not where he's comfortable. It's not something that is known to him. So he gets very uncomfortable, and he only has one way to express himself when he's uncomfortable, and that's to be sure that everybody else is uncomfortable. So that's one of the things that, was kind of difficult. I think, you try to go out in a smaller community where there aren't, as many pluses as there are to a small community. I think, everybody that lives here always goes, well, I wish I had more restaurants or whatever it may be. You try to go somewhere to eat as a family, and it's not gonna go so well. And I think, dealing with other people getting frustrated with your child, because they don't know. They don't understand. They think maybe you just have that kid for that day. You have the kid that's throwing the fit. So be a parent and make it stop. I think Melanie and I kind of got to a point where we felt more comfortable trying, when we did go out, to maybe go to a Weatherford or a Fort Worth, somewhere where like we didn't know folks, so that when there was an issue, I guess maybe we didn't feel as guilty, like we were disrupting that family's dinner with our family. And so there were things that you tried to work through because he needed the experience. He needed to be pushed and challenged, but it made life difficult. It made for, situations that a lot of folks don't ever stop to think about. And it gives you a greater appreciation for when I think maybe you see other folks that are having a struggle a little bit, not to be so quick to judge maybe. There's bad days, and then, like we've tried to teach our kids is, there's things you can control, there's things you can't. Control what you can control and be really good at those things. And then I think when you start to put things in that category, maybe you look at it a little differently. But going out to dinner as a family was a challenge. It was interesting and fun.
There's probably a lot of hard things, but one in particular for me, was the doctors kept giving us like countdowns, like he's not gonna live to be 1, he's not gonna live to be 2, and like so on and so forth. And as well as it being the hardest thing, is the doctors telling us like it's time to tell your brother goodbye.
So when you hear the words "say your goodbyes," that's tough. That was honestly probably the hardest thing I've witnessed. I think those were the only times my parents ever showed a lot of emotion throughout the entire thing. How could you expect to go on with your day knowing that your son might die, your brother might die?
When the doctors pulled us in and said, to say your goodbyes because he wouldn't live through the night. But you get an appreciation for someone when people say you can't do something, and the doctors are saying he can't make it through the night. Well, he made it through the night. He won't live to be 1. He lived to be 1. He won't live to be 2. Well, he lived to be 2. I think it was the third one when we were told that, and Melanie and I were like, we can't do this anymore. We can't quit giving us a deadline because it makes life difficult.
It was also super awesome to watch him just day by day fight through it, and like blow away all expectations and just keep proving people wrong. It was hard, but it's so awesome to watch.
And every time he was told, or we were told, that he couldn't do something, he did it. He's not going to be able to do this. He won't be able to walk. He walks. He won't be able to do this or that. He does this or that. And I think once we got kind of into year 3, and as a family we decided we weren't going to live off of the fear of a birthday, which was something that for a couple of years we lived in fear of. When the doctor tells you you won't live to be 1, you fear the birthday.
I think going into it, their infantile spasms are still so, there is a protocol to treat them. But everybody, the neurologists discussed with us, they usually turn into a different type of seizure. About 50% turn into this. A certain percentage changes to a different syndrome. Like everybody had gone to something else. It didn't just stop and go away. There was always something else that it would go to. I think he was probably 5 years old, and we were able to stop the medication. That we had stopped the shots, but we were able to. There was just medication that was for seizures, to prevent seizures and stuff like that was on, and we had tapered him off through 5 years. And he goes, "I've never seen." I remember being the neurologist, and he would say, "He must have the Jacoby-Conger disease because I have no clue what this is." He's not developing anything into anything else. He's staying seizure free. He's being pretty typical, but not developing normal. So I really don't know. I don't know where we're going. We're just going to keep on watching him.
Most head coaches are type A personalities. We're pretty straight-laced, and yeah, not knowing, as my family will tell you, me and not knowing we're not a good combo. I don't care what an answer is, because at that point I can formulate, what needs to be done. And that was, maybe some of my frustration as a father and a dad was, we don't know. Well, how do you take action on what you don't know?
There's not another diagnosis out there. We floated along for 5 years without a diagnosis.
The whole time, he never stopped. He just kept going. I mean, he did his thing. Whatever his thing is, he did it. But I think once we got past year 3 for me, it was kind of like, all right, you're a competitor. You are going to be competing in a different game than everybody else in this household, but you have got what I've seen in your brother and sister, which is a competitive streak, which is, it's just focused in a different arena of life. It's just pointed in a different direction. And so, I can remember just talking trash with him one day, and just saying, look, you've made it this far, so therefore I'm going to start pushing you, and I'm going to make you uncomfortable, because every time somebody tells you can't do something, you do it. So, you better get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I'm going to start demanding some things out of you. And, obviously he didn't understand me, but that's been one of my goals is, as a dad, is, okay, now that we kind of have a diagnosis and we know a little bit, all right, let's push, man. What can you become? What can you do? What can you accomplish that, folks say you can't do? And so I think learning to be the parent of a special needs child is, like the greatest thing ever.
We still hold the bar high on him and expect him to be able to do certain things. I think that he's a hefty 8-year-old that developmentally is about a 2-year-old. So he's quite a handful.
I've said this 100 times about that kid. He he understands and knows more than I think even the doctors can comprehend. He's far more intelligent than what the average person thinks of when they see him, you know. So that part to me is fun. The challenge of getting him to do things that he quote unquote isn't supposed to do or isn't supposed to be able to do. I think that's a lot of fun, and watching him accomplish things.
We accepted it, but I don't think we ever, the doctors weren't pushing for an answer, so we were like, he's developmentally delayed. It'll come along, you know, because something's gonna pop up. And last year, I remember the neurologist said, "Are you ready to do genetic testing?"
When the doctors used to refer to it as the Jacoby-Conger disease, it's not exactly how you want your child known. You don't want a disease named after them, right? You'd like to have statues built of them from the great things they've accomplished or this and that. So, you know, my smart aleck side was like, sweet, we're officially don't have to name a disease after the poor kid. So, but as you know, on the more serious end, it was just like, okay, now we have a path. Here's an answer. What do we do? You know, how do we attack this? How do we step out in front of this thing and do the best we can now, knowing? CFC in a nutshell is, you know, there's going to be certain traits that they have, and I think it's kind of cool, actually, because you realize, like, how amazing the 200 or 300 people are on the planet that have that, you know, and it's nice to know. I think whether it's your child being diagnosed with a disease or a human being in general, it's nice to know you're not the only one. You know, I think everybody wants to belong to something, you know, whatever it is that they want to belong to or be a part of. Everybody wants to be a part of something. And if that's Jacoby's being a part of something, then, you know, it's pretty cool, because he's part of a lot smaller club than all the rest of us. But it's been very interesting to learn about. It's been very interesting to see, like Melanie said earlier, you see other kids with it, you know, some of the other kids that are alive with it, and you go, that's Jacoby. And holy cow, you know, it's like a spitting image of him. It's a mirror almost. And, you know, so I think the disease itself, you know, there's still a lot they have to learn about it. There's still a lot in, I think, of figuring a lot of things out, obviously. But I don't think, it's just not the way we're wired as a family. It's not going to define him. We're not going to stop there. If anything, I think we've probably started pushing him more, especially knowing that we're going to get to have him for longer. Where I think initially maybe we didn't push in some areas because we were like, okay, if it is 2-year limit, what do we want him to be sure he can experience in his 2 years? If it's 3-year limit, what do we want him to be able to experience in 3 years? Now that, you know, I tease him a little bit. So now that you're going to be stuck with us for a while, you know, our expectations are just going to continue to go, and we're going to push and challenge him as much as we can, because we're not going to let, now that we know, just because we know, we're not going to let that define. It is nice to know, okay, but that doesn't mean we have to stop and pull back now. I think you push even more, okay, because now here's your next challenge. This disease says you can't do this. The doctors say you can't do this. The literature says you won't be able to do this. Well, go compete, dude. I mean, that's his competition every day, is proving that disease wrong, proving that he can do what right now, you know, people and doctors and specialists say he can't do. Why not go prove him wrong? What else you got to do with your life? She would always tell me, this is what you were meant to do. This is what God put you here to do. And, you know, I'm thankful for that for every day. I think when they realized that we were going to demand and expect out of them their best all the time, and it wasn't going to change. And we were not going to accept being the team that everybody looked forward to playing. From the standpoint of, you come in, you get your W's against Tarleton, and then you go on and play the tougher teams. Part of changing that mentality was getting them to grasp the concept of, you may get the best of us, but you're going to leave it out of here bruised, battered, and scarred for the battle. And getting that group of guys to realize that it's going to take more than they've ever given. It's going to take more effort than they've ever given, but the reward will be worth it. And I think, I can remember, to be honest with you, playing at Southeastern Oklahoma, and kind of a little bit of chippiness, if you will, a little bit of chirping from the other side. And I can remember at one point when we were down a little bit, and they're kind of giving it to us, just looking in the dugout and realizing that a lot of the guys were like, this is just the way it always is here at Tarleton. This is who we are. We take this. And I just turned around, and looked at them and said, fellas, at some point in your life, you have to stand up for yourselves. And you have to be willing to either fight back from what you don't like or accept what is. And currently what is they expect you to bow down. They expect you to give in, because that's what this program has traditionally been doing the last few years. I said, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to demand out of you everything that I think you're capable of. And I'm going to hope that you're going to expect the same out of yourselves when you go back out this next half inning. And I think for some of the guys that were seniors, you could kind of see in their eyes a little bit of, I am tired of this. I'm tired of being the doormat. I'm tired of being the one that people make fun of. And they came out, and we didn't chirp back, which was very proud of them, but they did it the right way. They responded. They came out. They put a couple runs up. We got a goose egg on the defensive end of it. And I think at that point, they kind of realized that you better answer with your actions if you want to change this. It can't be sit around and feel sorry for yourself. But I remember that game in particular, and it seemed like at that point when we finished and we came back and got a W, they expected to win from that day forward. They didn't always know how they were going to do it, but they expected to win. And as a coach, that was the first time where you kind of went, okay, now we're turning a corner, because they expect to win. They don't hope that they don't get embarrassed. They're expecting to find a way to win. Anytime you come in and you need to change the culture of something, that takes a little bit of time. I think when it really hit, to be honest with you, is probably year 2, because that summer after year 1 was a little bit more when we were starting to get hammered with what was going on exactly with Jacoby at the time. That first season, you get engulfed with, as a coach, you get engulfed with all the things you need to do to turn a group of young men around and teach them how to win. Take some guys that had never won before. We had seniors that had never experienced postseason play. And so you get consumed with, how do we reach them? How do we get them to believe they can do that? So that mission never changed. Now, at the end of the season, when some things became apparent, that's probably really, to be honest with you, when it started to, as a coach, I started to look at some things differently.
We try to stay out of his way as much as possible and let him do his job. It's sort of been the way our family went since Jacoby's been born, is especially during the playing season. We just definitely want to make sure that he's well rested and taken care of.
During the season, Melanie bears the majority of that brunt. And to be honest with you, if she didn't, I probably couldn't keep doing this, just simply because it's hard. I mean, this is being a head coach, coaching baseball. It's a chess match is really what it boils down to, and so you've got to be prepared for things, and if you want to be good, you've got to be several steps ahead at all times.
Our schedule fluctuates and it does fluctuate based off of Jacoby. He does much better when he's on a schedule, so we try to keep him on a schedule as much as possible. But the sleep is not ever there, so.
No matter how tired he was, he never showed it at the baseball field when I was around. Never showed it at the house. He just took life day by day. Just staying in the moment. He never looked far ahead.
I used to be probably exceptionally meticulous in planning things out when it came to running the program, and I still am, but not to an extent of planning like every second for a semester. It was more like, let's focus on today. Let's do the best we can with today. Let's give today everything we've got. And when that's over with, let's wake up tomorrow and do it again. The no sleep thing, I mean, that was a shocker. You know, when I do get asked by people at times, you know, what that's like, I say, you know, everybody's had a child. You know, you expect going into it that the first few months you're not going to get much sleep, but eventually there's a schedule that gets done, and the child learns to sleep regularly, or, you know, and this and that. And we're getting ready to be 9 years into it, and there's no regular sleep. There's no regular any of that. And so that part was an adjustment, I think, and that was maybe the most difficult thing, was professionally learning to train your brain to make all the quick decisions that you must make as a head coach when you're operating on, you know, a couple hours of sleep every night of the week. You know, and so that was an adjustment. And, you know, home life, I mean, I'm as a husband and father blessed with the type of family that I have, and that, you know, my wife has done a tremendous job. And if it hadn't have been for her, you know, this whole grand experiment of doing this profession with the things that Jacoby brings to the table, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
We had therapists in our house a lot, whether it was occupational, physical therapy. We had every kind of assistant system that you could possibly put into a family and early childhood intervention, coming into the house, rotating daily, hourly, working with me, working with Jacoby.
I don't know. There's a fine balance there that you try to get to. Of, I owe the kids in the program and their families the best that I'm capable of giving them, but more importantly, I guess you would say, is I owe my family my best. And you know, for me, that's probably been one of the biggest struggles, is trying to find the balance of giving the program my best and, you know, give the program your best, but giving your family your best, which is ultimately the most important thing. But, you know, I think when you're a competitor, it's sometimes hard to turn that off and go, okay, I can't always do this. You know, as a competitor, you go, I can always overcome. I can always, you know, find a way.
That's pretty impressive, though, because that he can go through with as little sleep as he does, and the amount of responsibility that he has, not just as the team, but as a father, as a husband. He still is able to accomplish so much. So it's pretty impressive that he's able to have as much success as he has. And
you hope that the people associated with the program can respect that. I mean, you don't know, but you hope that they can understand that, hey, Coach may not be at practice today because he's up in the Dallas-Fort Worth with you know, his family, a doctor's appointment or what have you. And so that's been from year 2 to now, that's been a struggle for me, is, never being willing to say, I can't do all of it, because that's my job. My job as a head coach is to do all of it. My job as a husband is to do all of it. As a father is to, do all of it, if you will. Obviously, my wife's the one that does most of it, but, that's the thought process is, where do you draw lines? I think you don't know where you draw lines until you're put in those situations. Where am I willing to sacrifice here so that I can do this? And where am I not willing to sacrifice so that I can still do this?
He loves his job. He loves working with the guys and getting out there and giving it his all, because that's what he's all about. He always gives everything in every aspect of his life, and Maddox is the exact same way. And I think it's good for them, like me for volleyball. They get to just be around the guys and not have to think about reality for a little bit. So.
You feel guilty when you can't be at certain things, like you're letting them down. But I thought they did a really good job, and you could see the program was growing. We were getting better. We were winning more. We were doing things, and I think it's just a testament in those early years to what a great job a lot of parents did in raising their kids, because we had guys at times that would be like, Coach, don't worry about it. We got it. That would check on how we're doing. That would, I think some of the neatest things were just the relationships that some of the players built, like with Maddox, and kind of taking the role of big brother on with him when all that stuff was going on. Sorry, I'm the crybaby of the family. But I can remember players going to like Maddox's basketball games or a baseball game, or I think that there was a time or two where a couple of them went to one of Kaylee's junior high basketball games, which that meant a lot to us as a family. It meant a lot to me as a coach. And it let me know without them saying anything that they appreciated what we were trying to do, as a coaching staff, and the things that off the field, away from the field, that we as a family were going through. And that was a pretty special time. I mean, and it turned out some really good teams, but you learn to love some of those guys, and you really miss them, because you saw what they were willing to adapt to.
That first season after Jacoby was born, I never really thought about it as helping my dad out with all the family issues that were going on. I grew up at the baseball field. I grew up being the bat boy. Wherever he coached, I was the bat boy. So then I didn't even think about me being around the field was important to him. I was just being a kid at the baseball field with my dad, a little boy's dream.
Going through this and realizing that my job and my responsibility to my children in Maddox and Kaylee was to be sure that they knew that they could still accomplish things, and knew that we still had expectations, and nothing would ever be used as an excuse to not accomplish things. And that's when I think I realized that it's the same thing professionally. So there was a lot of translation, and we've had some players over the years that they got it, and it's been a lot of fun to watch and see that, and I think the most rewarding thing as a coach is when you get told thank you for that stuff, not the baseball stuff. Just the ability to learn from Jacoby, to learn from my family, has made me a better coach, and see how they have never given up. They've never taken no for an answer. It's always been find a way, and I hope that we can work to instill that in the guys in our program is, never take no. Never accept less than what you are truly fully capable of. And it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's fun to go through all the time, but everybody is capable of being more than what they are at this moment in time. And I think that is one of my biggest takeaways from this whole thing is just constantly striving to improve, and the challenge of that, and the challenge of making this program better.
My dad never. He's so good at putting life aside when he's at the baseball field, and when he's at the baseball field, transitioning back into life. He never lets it affect him. If he has a bad day at the field, never affected him at the house, and vice versa.
Again, sacrifices. Right, wrong, whether players, coaches, others judge me, so be it. But I don't go to 6 a.m. weights anymore. I can't do it. We have 6 a.m. weights because that's when we can get into the weight room here. That's when our setup here allows our guys to get in it. So the team is in there, and our strength coaches do a tremendous job with them. But I'm not there like I used to be. Some of it is, at some points in times when we deal with Jacoby, the only time he sleeps is from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. So that's when you try to get some sleep. And the other end is, life changes. And so you got to get Jacoby up and ready for school then at that point and take him to school. So for me, as a husband and father, 6 a.m. weights don't work into that schedule. And I know, sometimes you kind of get looked at as a head coach when you're not there, but it is what it is. And, if that's something that folks want to hold against me, that's fine.
Surprisingly, he does what he always does. He did very well. He held on and just plowed through it, just like whether he was sleeping or not sleeping, just adapted to it. I don't think it really, no one would notice the effects that maybe it would have on him at home. Obviously, come home, try to sleep as much as he could when he could, and then just go to the field, head to the field. I mean, he might come home at lunch, take a quick nap, maybe shove his lunch down, take a quick power nap, and head to the field and go for the day. So,
because there are times when you're operating on no sleep, you're kind of, I'll be lying to you if things didn't creep in your mind, like, man, am I seeing this right, or this and that. And I know Melanie has gotten on me a little bit about something as simple as going back into the third base box this year. And when you're operating on very limited sleep, the thing I have definitely learned is your reflexes slow down tremendously. And obviously they're going to slow down as you get a little bit older, but it's amazing, what the human body can do, but at the same time what it can't do if it's not, getting everything that it needs. And so I think initially, to be honest with you, I struggled with it just from the standpoint of, man, this is different. How am I going to do all this? Can I do everything I need to do?
Enjoy time with your family. No matter how work's going, how family life's going, just enjoy the moment that you're in. And cherish all the small little things that you do as a family. I know he has, and I know I can never pay him back for how much he's done for the family. Even my mom. I've said it multiple times already, but I'll say it again. Both my parents are superheroes. And I love them.
There's an old saying that says, your job as a parent, your job as a mentor, or however you want to look at a certain role, is to prepare the child for the path, not to prepare the path for the child. And that not knowing is kind of when that started hitting me. It was like, as a father, I need to prepare my children for the path, whatever that path is. I can't prepare the path for them. For this program, I need to prepare these young men for the path of what we want to do, of what we want to become. And I can't change and prepare the path for them, because the path is always going to change. I mean, and that's what I learned in not knowing, is there's a path, but you don't know. And if you're always trying to just find the path and you're consumed on the not knowing part, you're not going to get anywhere. So prepare yourself the best that you can. Prepare, control what you have the ability to control the best that you can, and make that your focus. And eventually you'll find the right path. And so, I think looking back at it, it's frustrating as all get out. But I think, like most things in life, when you're frustrated, or maybe you're not getting the results you want, when you have a chance to step away from it, you learn from it. And probably we learn our best lessons that way. He doesn't care if we win or lose. He only cares if I'm going to take him for a piggyback ride. He only cares if I'm going to keep his Nilla wafer bowl filled up. And he only cares if you are going to do what he wants to do. That's all he cares about. And so I think as a dad / coach, or a guy that happens to coach college baseball, I think it teaches you an appreciation for, when you have, because it's baseball, so you're going to lose, what's the old Bull Durham? It's the game of baseball. You win some, you lose some, and sometimes it rains. And so when you lose or it rains, you can't always control those things. You can't control the weather. You can't control maybe why you lost on that particular day because of this particular game. But you can control going home and seeing someone who just wants to see you, and he just wants you to be you. And so I think you get an appreciation for, at the end of the day, it is just baseball. I mean, when it's time for baseball, it's everything you got, all you got, empty the tank. And when the tank's empty, go home and empty the tank with your family. It's not easy. It's not the easiest thing to do, and I can always be better at it. But he's my stress reliever from that, because it's taught me a lot. He's taught me a lot more than I'll ever teach him, for sure.
Jacoby is a handful these days. He is always been a happy child, always been pretty darn happy. He still continues to be that way. He's being able to grow. He still doesn't eat. He still doesn't sleep. He when it comes to him, there's so many things that the little victories that you have, the understanding, the comprehension. He's wondered if he would ever comprehend certain things, but just this week, went to the grocery store with him. Brian would give him something. He would go, walk over, and put it in the grocery cart for us. Something that a simple task like that is just amazing in our eyes that he can do that.
You've seen him over the years now. He understands when he's at the baseball field. He expects to hear the sound of the bat and ball hitting each other. And he likes that. I mean, there's an environment to it where, he loves being out there. And it's neat for me because, once you, I think, get over the initial parts of, oh, my child won't be able to do this, he won't be able to do that, and you throw all that to the side and start focusing on what he can do. If the music's going, he's dancing, whether it's at practice or in the stands. So You know, it's interesting side story. You know, because I've had the complaints of why we play the music so loud sometimes at practice and stuff. And initially it was just because when Jacoby finally got to where he could get out and about a little bit, when he can feel the bass or when he can actually physically feel music, he'll dance and he gets happy. And so it used to be initially when he was healthy enough to bring to the field, I'd go crank it up because he could. It made him happy, you know. So the people that didn't like the fact that the music was loud, you know, so be it. But it made him happy, and that's all I cared about. But you know, when he comes out to practice and stuff, it's fun because he knows he's at the field. It's fun that he's learned to throw a ball. You know, we don't know where it's going. You got to have a 360 swivel because he could be looking at you and throw it straight back over there. But no, it's been a blessing because it's neat to see that, you know, something as simple as going to a baseball game, he can put a correlation together. Like when he comes to the field, he knows that's where Dad's at. And so, you know, the fences don't mean anything to him. A game doesn't mean anything to him. If there's a game, he feels like he should be with Dad. I mean, Melanie has to chase him around to try to keep him from finding a way onto the field while the game's going on. You know, but to be able to, something as simple as that, to be able to see him put the correlation together, baseball field, Dad, go get Dad. It's really neat. I mean, it's simplistic, but it's beautiful.
What future do I see for Jacoby? A future that he's happy. That kid smiles and laughs more than anyone I've ever met in my life.
I just look at him and I hope to see like him keep breaking standards and like learning to learning to push himself in ways that like he's doing things that none of us thought he'd ever do, like for example walking, like something as simple as walking. So I want him to keep like proving all the doctors wrong and all the just everyone blowing everyone out of the water.
I don't think I think about that too much. Maybe I should.
We're going to continue to push him and challenge him. But if he can just remain at heart happy, I mean, because that's, to me, ultimately the most special thing about him is how, you know, you can say it or people can say whatever, you know, the hand he's been dealt or whatever you want to call it. Day in and day out, the kid's happy. And that's all I want for him, is to be happy, because at the end of the day, whatever life experiences he has, I just want him to enjoy them, you know. And as far as the future goes, I know Melanie talked about it, and it just really is, I think, the way we kind of are as a family. Sometimes it can get you, but we don't plan it out anymore. We tried that. It doesn't work. It's too stressful. It's too hard.
I think that he's still got so much in him and growth and ability that he's going to do well, and he's going to be able to be a functioning member of society with some assistance. So
He was, it still is the best Christmas present I've ever gotten.